When I started, right, I had no idea that this could lead to new inquiries. I was just having fun with a video camera. I nearly fell off my chair when the first email came in about 18 months after I started producing videos of somebody wanting to work with me purely off the back of it. And of course, then it's a fire hose. I say 85% of new inquiries, but people need to know we get 3 inquiries a day and we're in Penzance, right? So we've gone from 6 people when I joined to 25 people and quintupled revenue since I've been producing content. Of that growth, and we've added 50% in the last 18 months to revenue. So, we're just basically trying to scale to keep up with demand, which is a hell of a nice problem to have.
Welcome to another episode of Talk FS. Today I'm joined by someone who has truly made a lasting impact in the world of financial advice, Peter Matthew. Peter is not only the CEO of Jackson's Wealth, he's also a visionary behind Meaningful Money, a platform that has helped thousands improve their financial well-being. Through his work, Peter is on a mission to improve the financial health of the nation, educate people on how to manage their money effectively, and tackle the barriers that prevent financial confidence and success. In this episode, we'll be covering the benefit of showing up consistently and how Peter is improving the financial health of the nation. Pete, thank you for joining me today and welcome to the podcast.
Cheers, Ryan. It's very funny. Hardly anybody calls me Peter, so it's really funny when somebody does. I think, yeah, sound like my parents. But and also, a visionary is pushing it. But I'm grateful. That was a very kind introduction. Thank you.
No problem at all. Well, if you look at your work, we can go back many, many years, long before everyone was jumping on the bandwagon. So you really have been putting the hard yards in. So I think for me, what would be a really nice place to start is the legacy you're building. And legacy is a big word when you look at it. But if we could just break it down into a few different segments, this is not something, as I've just mentioned, that you've been doing an overnight work on. You've been at this for many, many years. What is it you're looking to achieve through the work you're doing when it comes to sort of the content you're putting out there?
Yeah, good start, man. Definitely one of the triggers for starting the whole process was a desire to kind of make more of an impact than I could do kind of one-on-one with clients day to day. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that at all. And, if that's all it had been, I think, as long as I love my wife and raise my kids all right, I'd consider it a life well lived. But there was something, it might be my sort of Christian upbringing, which obviously encourages you to think a little bit more eternal, perhaps, sort of greater than yourself as well. But I just kind of wanted to make a little bit more of a dent. I would be wrong to say there wasn't a little bit of ego in that, right? I think anybody who told you that would be a liar. But it definitely, I grew up in a home where my parents just relentlessly served people. There was always people coming around for dinner, just needing a bed for the night, visiting folks just coming through, and mum and dad would just put them up, So I guess that's in my DNA. So as far as what I'm trying to do, the reason I smiled when you used the word visionary is because right at the start, there was really no vision, right? It was just like, hey, let's have some fun with a video camera and see how it goes. But it became kind of self-sustaining in a way, in that before too long, I start to get emails, comments, tweets. I was quite active on Twitter back then, of people just saying, "Oh, this is really useful." And actually, do you know what? A year ago, I had 25 grand worth of credit card debt, but now, I've just paid the last of it off, and I feel free at last, and I can start to save for my kids. That's like proper meaningful stuff. Huh? Do you know what I mean? And that it's like, well, actually, this is good work I'm doing here, and maybe I can scale it. And so at the very least, I'll keep going and do what I'm doing, even if it's a handful of people whose lives are improved as a result. But it turns out, obviously, it's, millions of people have consumed the content now. And if even just a fraction of those have improved their financial outlook as a result, then that's a job well done, but it's ongoing. So I really don't, I guess I don't know what the end game is. It's just to help as many people as possible, really. I don't have any grand sort of, 1 billion people by the time I'm 60 or anything like that. I never would think of it in those terms. It's just like, let's put some good stuff out and hope it helps as many people as possible.
Yeah, fantastic. And in your day-to-day work, you're a financial advisor, which many associate with wealthy individuals who've got large pensions, large investments, typically. That's not what you restrict your content to. As you mentioned in that example there, you were talking about credit card debt. Is it universal in what you're trying to achieve with everything to do with finances?
Yeah, I mean, those that can afford to deal with a financial planner probably should deal with a financial planner, right? But there are many who can't. And I guess one of the other motivations was, I mean, bear in mind, I started in 2010, right? That's when I put my first video up in 2010. And so we were 2 and a bit years away from the Retail Distribution Review, the RDR, which any idiot could see would disenfranchise a vast swathe of the population from getting halfway decent advice. Because prior to that, you could walk into your bank. It might not have been as optimal as seeing a really good IFA, but a family that walks into a bank and comes out with life insurance or a pension, even if it's a really expensive pension invested in active funds, it's better than no pension at all, right? So a huge number of people were suddenly not going to be able to afford access to decent financial advice. Definitely a factor was, look, we need to just get the basics out there to ordinary people so they can help themselves if the industry is going to essentially close up and not be able to help them profitably, which is essentially what ended up happening. The RDR, if it didn't start it, it certainly exacerbated the advice gap. So, a huge, the middle, I want to say Middle England, but that obviously is a bit rude to our Scottish and Welsh and Northern Irish um, fellows. But do you know what I mean? The sort of ordinary folks, working folks who just need to put as much as they can into a pension and an ISA, and the rest will kind of largely look after itself. Those are the people who they don't know they need to do that because we don't ever teach them.
Mm.
We join them automatically to a pension, but we don't really explain what it's about. They have no idea how it's invested or very often any interest. But if I could, just pique the interest of those folks and help them to improve their situation with just a few easy steps, that was a key point. Now, weirdly, I'm sure we'll get onto this, but Meaningful Money brings in 85% of the new inquiries to my financial planning practice. But those are the people with many hundreds of thousands or millions. They are in our sweet spot. And yet the content, at least initially, wasn't aimed at them. So kind of go figure, really. I just am a big believer that if you put good information out and help as many people as possible, that the universe kind of looks after you. And that's certainly been my experience. And we've grown fivefold since I started putting content out. So that kind of speaks for itself, I think.
Definitely. And have you seen any trends over that years from the 2010 to today in terms of what the people consuming your content are regularly asking questions around at all?
Yeah, I mean, certain things are kind of timeless and universal, like, what will the Chancellor do at the next budget? Or, what will the moron in the White House make markets do next? Those are the sorts of things that, they're kind of pretty timeless. But I guess the content has shifted. There's no doubt about that. It's shifted kind of in response to the feedback. So, for instance, I mean, the first 75 videos took somebody all the way from, like, here is money mindset stuff. Here's how to set and stick to a budget all the way through to retirement. And then I just kind of built on that and came at the same subject from different approaches and stuff. But easily the most engaged cohort of my audience, no surprise, look like me. So they're middle-aged. I'm 50, right? So they're mostly blokes. 85% of my audience is male. And so obviously you kind of attract your own tribe in many ways. So the content these days speaks more to them than it used to, but there's so much sort of content and sort of back catalogue that can speak to anybody. And I have like Meaningful Academy, which is the foundational course, is free. And it will walk people through how to budget, how to understand insurance and all that sort of stuff. So, but now I spend more time speaking to the cohort who really resonate with the sort of message, really. So has there been a change? Not really. The questions that people ask are broadly the same. A lot is, can I really do this myself? To which my answer is yes. If you have the wit, the time, and the energy, then yes, anybody can. What we do is not rocket science. Mechanically, in terms of the mechanics of personal finance, what we're really good at is understanding people and being able to sort of mold our plan for a client's unique situation and build a plan that they can stick to and help them stick to it through coaching and ongoing advice. That's the magic of being a good financial planner, I think. And of course, if somebody's on their own doing it themselves, they don't get that. And that, I think, is the difference. So mostly the questions I get are, can I really do it myself? Am I overpaying my advisor for something I can do myself? That happens. I get that one a lot. And then it's mostly the mechanics of retirement, actually. So it's the same stuff, really.
I guess on that second question, am I overpaying the advisor? It must be a hard one for you to process that inquiry, because you're then having to sort of audit your peers, which is healthy for any industry to have that element. But also sometimes clients don't understand the value behind what needs to take place as well. How do you handle that on occasions?
It's it is a good question, and it's studiously avoid slagging off my peers, because I don't know very often the people who, the clients or their audience members are talking about. And I'm sure the vast majority of advisors in this country are earnest, well-meaning, just trying to do a great job for their clients, right? Even those who may be operating under some restrictions for whatever reason, because of the company they're employed by or whatever. Ultimately, I was a tied advisor when I first started. I still did my absolute best for the client within those restrictions. So I really avoid trying to sort of have a go at anybody. Perhaps the best example I can give you is a conversation I had yesterday. So it's a guy deep in mid-Wales, been listening to me and watching the videos for quite a few years. And he was almost surprised when I turned up on the call, because it was a new inquiry call. He was inquiring about working with us. This is a guy with a £2.5 million net worth, of which about 1.2 million in a SIP. He did a DB transfer a few years ago, for which he obviously needed to have financial advice, and he was still with the advisor. But he was telling me, he said, I'm arguing with the advisor and about how I want to be invested. My £1.2 million pension fund, I want to invest that super low cost global index trackers, and the advisor's pushing back. And there's a couple of other things. He said that he's starting to almost get frustrated with the advisor. I said, well, look, it sounds to me like you're ready to go it alone. And so what value is the advisor giving you? And just in talking to the client, it was evident he was able to do this and willing, and was happy kind of auditing his own decisions. He really didn't need the coaching, I don't think. So, I looked at his plan and I just said, look, you just certainly don't need us. And I would argue you don't need your advisor. And he couldn't believe it, really. He was like, really? I'm like, yes, that's the right thing for me to say, because I could charge you plenty of money to look after that pension, but I'd be doing the same things that you are. So why pay an advisor to do something you can do yourself? So sometimes it's really clear that a client can go it alone and they don't need to see us. But I always studiously say, look, anybody can benefit from working with a really good advisor. The relationship, all that sort of stuff. Everybody can benefit, but not everybody absolutely needs it.
And I guess in that situation, it's his choice if he wishes to pay an advisor the money for the fee, because even though he's knowledgeable and able to audit things himself, he may just want an advisor, and that's also absolutely fine too.
It is.
You just want someone who's aligned with advisor and client, are aligned nicely together.
Yeah, but absolutely. And I said to him, look, if you want to come back in 5 years and you want us to take a snapshot look at everything and basically say, yep, carry on as you are, or you might want to consider these 2 or 3 things, then we're happy to do that. But most advisors are not. Mm-hmm. Most advisors are not happy to do a one-off piece of planning. Now, my friend Paul Armson, who is a gift to the profession, he really gets up in arms about sort of the idea of a one-off financial plan. And I get it, right? So if we do that for a client, it's full of caveats. It's like, right, from the day we produce it, it's wrong, right? Because too many things can change. And it's better, no doubt, to have a plan which is fluid and alive and can be altered to take into account what's going on in the world and in the client's circumstances. But I'd rather say to a client, look, all things considered, you're on the right track. Keep going. Maybe consider you're thinking about inheritance tax planning, maybe giving some more money away or whatever. But they want to go and do that themselves and not instruct us to implement. I'm cool with that, but most advisors are not. That's why I think financial coaching, unregulated financial coaching as a profession, is on the rise, because it fills a gap between full DIY and full regulated advice, which still is too predicated on assets under management. right?
Yep.
And so financial coaching can be, well, actually, let me guide you through some decisions. You're making the decisions, but let a coach guide you through and handhold you through some pretty big decisions. Challenge your questions, challenge your assumptions, but none of it's regulated. And I think that's going to be a really important kind of profession going forward.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that. We've had a number of guests recently on the podcast who've talked about the financial coaching element. Also, financial well-being is a term that's
Yes.
definitely growing. For me
Good.
myself, I've been in the industry 12 years now, and I've heard more this year in the last 12 months about financial well-being than I probably have in all the years prior to it.
Yeah,
Uh,
good.
it's definitely something that I think cash flow modeling is something that's been available in the industry for a few years now. And I think any advisor out there not doing cash flow modeling is likely to potentially lose clients to a fellow,
Yes.
individual who is offering it. And then I think where certain experts and certain people who, are clued up on the industry are seeing the next wave of where you may win or lose clients is then the financial well-being element in
Yes.
terms of, are you asking the questions around, behaviors and feelings towards money? And then the wider element, I think what the government are doing plays nicely into that hat, and in terms of the changes to do with like inheritance tax, because it would just be leave as big a part as possible and then it's all passed down. Whereas, all the changes coming into play there, it's like, well, do you want to do that and then, leave a large tax bill, or do you want to be thinking about gifting now, for instance? And that then leaves questions to do with, well, do you want to gift it or not?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not worried about AI, right? Because nobody's going to have these conversations with a bot.
Mm,
Well, they might start that way, but these are deeply human questions and answers that need teasing out. So I absolutely agree with you, right? And financial well-being, this is stuff that cannot be addressed by AI. I just don't buy it, and I'm all over AI. Super excited about it, but yeah, nobody is going to have these conversations with software. I just don't buy it. Not in such a way that a really good advisor who they've built up a relationship with can really challenge them on, and gently knowing them as individuals. And there's no AI is going to do that, not anytime soon anyway. So I'm not worried about that at all. In fact, what AI will do is give us the space to have deeper, more meaningful conversations with clients, because we're going to be doing less admin, which is great.
yeah. And within that time that's freed up, I guess there's benefit in showing up online. You're seeing the
Yes.
benefits of that.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that. As we said, 15 years in now, 85% of your inquiries come from the content you're doing. Many individuals out there would snap your hand off if they were able to have that level of inquiries. Talking about a £2.5 million client, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an overnight success. You have to put the hard yards in. What advice do you have to someone who's maybe started or wants to start their journey towards showing up online a little bit more?
Look, I think motivation is important, right? So, and there's no right or wrong motivation, but I think if your motivation is to make more money, to attract more clients, I think that will kind of filter into the stuff you produce. I think people have a really sensitive bull monitor, something, if you see what I mean, right? So they know if people are selling online. Whereas I think if you are genuinely helpful, that also comes across. People say that to me all the time, which sounds a bit nauseating, but that honestly is when I started, right, I had no idea that this could lead to new inquiries. I was just having fun with a video camera. Content marketing as a phrase, I don't think was actually coined in 2010, or if it was certainly not part of the parlance that it is now. So I had no idea. I nearly fell off my chair when the first email came in about 18 months after I started producing videos of somebody wanting to work with me purely off the back of it. And of course, then it's a fire hose. I mean, I say 85% of new inquiries, but people need to know we get 3 inquiries a day and we're in Penzance, right? So we've gone from like 6 people when I joined to 25 people and quintupled revenue since I've been producing content. Of that growth, and we've added 50% in the last 18 months to revenue. So, we're just basically trying to scale to keep up with demand, which is a hell of a nice problem to have. And so it is a bit of a snowball, right? So I think motivation matters. So why you're doing it. So be as relentlessly helpful as you can, knowing that 99% of the people who consume your content will not get in touch, right? But those 99%, if they come away with an idea, a bit of motivation, a bit of encouragement that they're on the right track, that's a job well done, right? But the 1%, most advisors, that's all you're going to need, right? You don't need thousands and thousands of clients, right? What you need is like 150 really good ones per advisor, right? And then you can make a very good living off that and do a great job for them. So I would definitely start with who you would like to reach. All right. Again, I've kind of found this out largely by accident, saying that the audience looks like me. That's just kind of happened. But if for instance, I am shortly to begin a podcast with my daughter, who's 22, with the sole intention of reaching young adults. Okay. So I'll be the wizened sort of wise figure in the corner, and she will front it because she's a lot better looking and a lot cooler than me to her generation. Right. So there's intent there. So I would definitely start, if this is a marketing thing, and that's okay, I would definitely start with who do I want to reach? Where are the people that I want to reach hanging out online? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Instagram? Are they watching YouTube videos? Are they reading? Are they reading stuff in the local press even still? Do you know? So I would definitely start there. I mean, that's kind of marketing 101. Where are the people that I want to reach hanging out? And then I think one of the best books on content marketing is called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. And he bought a swimming pool company in 2008 when the property market in America was just tanking. Nobody was buying swimming pools. So he bought into this company and it was, on the verge of bankruptcy. And he literally just started creating articles on his website, answering the questions that people asked about swimming pools. Which is best, a concrete or a fiberglass pool? Right? Of course, people will search for that. If you are seeing clients every day, you know what questions are coming up all the time. Just answer them. Answer them in a way that you do with your clients face to face. And sit down and make a list of those questions, because I bet without even trying, you'd probably be able to come up with 50, right? And probably a lot more. So that's where I would start. Where are they hanging out? What questions are they answering? And how can I best answer those in such a way that will reach the people that I need? And start with your existing clients. Whatever you produce, just push it out to them because they will share it. And so you've got a ready-made audience which can sort of propagate that way. And then, of course, you got the social avenues. You got Instagram, LinkedIn, all that sort of stuff. And you just start learning this stuff and getting a bit better with every new piece of content you do. So that's kind of where I tend to encourage people to start.
And with those 50 questions, you must have now recovered the same subject on more than one occasion.
Many times.
How do you overcome that? Is it there's going to be a new take on it because 2-3 years down the line, changes in whatever it means?
Yeah, legislation maybe. Yes. So obviously that does happen. So suddenly it's like, okay, pensions are in your estate from April 2027. Let's talk about that, shall we? Think about what the implications are. Should I take tax-free cash before the budget? All right, got a video coming out on that pretty soon. So there's always timely stuff, but then there's a reasonable proportion of what we do, which is timeless. So yeah, I mean, I've revisited it probably hundreds of times by now, right? So I'm an advocate of index investing, super low cost. Investing really is the easy bit about what we do. Just stick it in the markets and let them do their thing. I know some people will disagree with that, but there's no right way to invest. There's many ways, and that's the one I believe in very strongly. I mean, I lost count of the times I've talked about index tracking or sort of multi-asset stock and bond portfolios. But you can come at it from different points of view. So I started to do like seasons of the podcast, and I did one on like life stages, and I did one for each life stage from sort of young adults all the way through to end of life, later life stuff. And loads of stuff came up at each life stage, but you just approached it from the point of view of the life stage that I was talking about that podcast season. So it's amazing how many ways there are to talk about the same stuff. All right. I did a whole series on ultimate guides. So each episode was longer. It's about 45, 50 minutes, but I covered everything to do with protection. whatever in one hit, and did downloadable sort of checklists so people could, and calculators to work out how much cover they might need, and just really went all in. So it's the same stuff. It's like you need to protect yourself in case you die, get a critical illness, or can't work. But here's a bit more detail about it, or let's really focus on income protection and bring in a specialist to talk about that. So it's the same stuff, man, but there are endless ways. Really, you just have to keep going and keep thinking of new stuff. Maybe I'm good at that, but really, I think I've probably come at it every possible way now. I'm not sure if I can, I can keep going because you got 600 podcast episodes, right? 300 of them are not in the feed anymore, or a lot of them aren't, because they're too old and they probably do need an update. So it's fine.
And when you were talking about that, where my mind went was that actually, if you do show up regularly on topics again and again and again, probably shows you're an expert on that topic. And if you want a client to inquire about that topic, well, if they do go, oh my God, Pete keeps banging on about this, well, I guess
maybe I should pick up the phone.
Yeah, maybe he is the right person to talk to. So I guess that's sometimes a fear when I speak to people about, I don't know what to post. And well, your idea is fantastic. Just write down 50 commonly questions or topics you come across in your day-to-day basis. But actually don't care if 6 months, 12 months later, you're covering the same stuff, because within the feed, if it keeps popping up that you keep doing this, well, you're probably quite good. And that's
definitely. And your second dealing with the same subject will be better. It'll be more refined. One of the things that creating content for 15 years has done for me personally is refine and distill my ability to explain these things. And, I've got sort of younger advisors working for me, guys who have been advising like a couple of years. And I might sit in on a meeting with them, or they're sitting in on one with me. And the client will ask a question, and I've got like a 13-word flawless answer to the question. And I'll deliver it, whatever it might be. And the client will just go, yeah, cool, thanks, I understand now. And the younger advisors are just like writing it down. I never would have thought to have put it like that. Well, it's just experience, right? I've been advising for 28 years, and I've been creating content for 15. So it's not that I'm particularly gifted. It's just that if you repeat something often enough, you refine it and you distill it over time. It'll make anybody who creates content a vastly better communicator. If nothing else, it'll help you with your clients.
Yeah, because
that's reason enough.
Because social media can be a little bit brutal. You put the most effort into a video and it just flops, or you do one and it does fantastically well. That can also educate you on how well you covered that topic. Now, you never really get that feedback with a client, do you? You walk away, the client goes, you described that in a rubbish way. I would not have watched that video again, or I would not attended this client meeting again. They don't give you that feedback. So I guess actually creating content in a really brutal way can teach you what you have or haven't described well. Is that fair?
Very much so. Yeah, no doubt about that. And you should consume your own content as well, and consume other people's content. So I'm a massive fan of a guy called Damien Jordan. He has a YouTube channel called Damien Talks Money. He is just like nauseatingly gifted at what he does. He will just explain things in a certain way, or come up with a metaphor for something. And I just think if you'd have given me a century, I never would have come up with explaining it as well as that. I just think he's an astonishing talent. And yet his audience is different to mine, right? The thing about the internet is it's a really, really big place, and you don't need a massive audience. You just need a big enough one for it to make a difference to your life and business. So yeah, you do get instant feedback. You have a little bit of a thick skin sometimes, but ultimately nobody dies if I make a bad video. Do you know what I mean? And you learn from it and you make the next one better. So that's part of the fun of it for me. It's developing the craft.
Yeah, definitely. Now, within our conversation so far, you've mentioned a few really interesting stats. You've grown from 6 to 24, 25 in your team. What's the content and meaningful money done to your personal career and the business that you're part of and own?
Okay. I mean, it's changed my life is the short answer. There's no doubt about that. So I think if I give folks some context, right? So Meaningful Money is a separate limited company, right? As soon as it started making any money at all, I wrapped a company around it. Okay. So Meaningful Money essentially is a podcast. It's a YouTube channel. Those things are free to consume, but there is a limited amount of ad revenue, very small, that comes off that. But back in 2020, I launched something called Meaningful Academy. So basically it's the same content, but much more distilled with workbooks, calculators, very sort of curated. It's a course essentially. And there are 3 foundations, which is free. That is the basics of budgeting, protection, financial mindset, debt elimination, the basics really. Then there's a course called Build Wealth. That's a one-off cost. It's about 450 quid, I think. And then there's a retirement planning course. That's about 650 quid one-off cost. Well, I mean, Meaningful Academy revenue is about £250,000 a year. And I spend 90 minutes a month on it. Right? So this is almost a definition of passive income. Occasionally I have to update some videos. I've got to do that this week. But I mean, that's a monumental revenue stream for what started out as a hobby, right? Now I have costs, right? I have help with it because there's no way I can keep on top of it. I have people working for me and with me in it. But that's a pretty decent business in its own right. I could quit financial advice and probably triple that, right? Without any regulation. So sometimes, believe me, I wonder why I don't. But Jackson's, when I joined Jackson's 21 years ago, and it was a classic provincial IFA firm. There were 3 guys who owned it. I joined as a self-employed advisor, and they had 1.5 staff. And they were basically just 3 guys pooling resources. It wasn't a business, not really. So I joined it, and the goal was always that I was their exit strategy, right? I was like 20 years younger than them. So I was their exit strategy, and they invited me to join and buy into the company. I mortgaged to the hilt to do it. And the deal I had with them was, look, you have built revenue streams here. I need you to support me as I build this into a business such that it can buy you out and give you a great retirement. Right. And to their credit, they backed me in that. And together we built something slowly initially. But it took 4 years after I started creating content for Meaningful Money to become the number 1 source of new inquiries. It took 4 years. But now, as I said before, it's 85%, and it's a crazy number of new inquiries, more than really we can cope with. So we're scaling up for that. But it's now a business, right? It's a business. I'm not actually doing that much advising anymore. Still do a little bit. But, we're 7 advisors plus me, 4 strong power planning team, brilliant CRM team of 8, I think, plus some support, practice manager, finance, and data and that sort of stuff. So it's a business now. But I've been able to do that because of the lead flow and the income stream. And I'm actually not very driven by money, which some people might think sounds odd, but as long as I've got enough, I'm fairly content. And so that means I've plowed more money back into Jackson's and built it more quickly than I might. I pay my staff more than a lot of my peers might think is sensible. For instance, I have a commitment to pay in Penzance London waiting salaries by the end of next year. So we're pushing salaries up. And we work a 4-day week. That doesn't make any sense, really. Right? If we worked a 5-day week, I'd probably earn more. But we work a 4-day week. The staff love it. Obviously, I love it. And since we've done that, we've increased revenue by 50%. So it hasn't held us back at all. Maybe we could have increased revenue by 75% if we worked 5 days. But I don't care about that. All right, 50% is just fine. And so what Meaningful Money has done is kind of opened my eyes to just the power of the internet to drive revenue, to improve more people's lives than my own, which is a real key factor for me. Again, back to my upbringing, I think. And I'm having an absolute whale of a time just trying to basically harness all this. Because I keep saying to the team, none of us really know what we're doing because we've never been here before. We have a plan, and usually it gets blown out of the water by something unexpected. But we're having a great time just kind of building something cool that we're proud of. But I couldn't do any of it without the level of inquiries that we get and the caliber of inquiries that we get from Meaningful Money. It enables me to do really good, detailed, complex financial planning work. I work with great lawyers and accountants who can build pretty snappy trust structures if that's what we need. So we're not dealing with 20 grand into an ISA. People like that don't need us, essentially. So it's no exaggeration to say it's changed my life. It's obviously changed it financially, but I've been able to buy out 4 retiring colleagues, largely due to the revenue that's come in from Meaningful Money. So I'd be interested to know where I'd be without it.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
So it's life-changing.
You're certainly incredibly switched on. So I think you would have been successful in
Thank you.
without it. But you will never know that path, will you?
No, exactly.
Had you not taken it, or had you given up at any point as well? Because I'm sure you've had days where you thought, is it all worth it? Especially in those early days, 18 months to get your first inquiry off the back of it. That's a long, long time to go before
Yeah,
you
but
go,
remember, I wasn't waiting for inquiries. I didn't think that was what it was about.
"Mm,
And that might sound disingenuous to people now, but that's the God's honest truth. I had no idea that this could lead to direct revenue. I hadn't made any money up to that point from any other source. Around about the same time, I approached 7IM, good friends of the firm, to maybe stick their logo on some videos and help me buy some equipment, which they very kindly did. They were, material to the early success, really. But that was it. That was way before the academy, way before YouTube ad revenue, all that sort of stuff. So now it's a pretty serious machine. But I was never waiting for an inquiry. So I don't know that I've ever had a wondering, is it worth carrying on? I've had times where, just recently, my mum's passed away, right? And this year has been hard for various other reasons. Lost an advisor at Jackson's. I had to step back into client work more than I liked. And I've done 9 videos all year. Podcast's gone out pretty much on like clockwork, but 9 videos all year instead of 1 a week, all right? So that's a lot lower sort of work rate. But not... it's still fine, right? And so these things kind of ebb and flow a little bit, but not once have I don't recall anyway thinking, do you know what, this isn't worth it, I can't be bothered. Because I fire up the lights and I set the camera up and I just get a tingle. I just love it. Maybe I'm just a tart. I don't know. But maybe I just like the sound of my own voice too much. But I love it still, and that's why I keep doing it. Certainly it's one of the reasons why I keep doing it. There are people whose jobs are dependent on it now, so that adds a bit of pressure as well.
good stuff." And something you were talking about a second ago was the academy, and also that a lot of your inquiries can provide really interesting cases to work on. I think that's a really interesting point, because there's a lot of business owners I'm speaking to now, is that decision they're having to make to turn away business when people don't have enough. Their pot's not big enough to profitably take them on as a client. I think for you, you're in a better position than most because you have a nice place to point them in the direction of.
Yes.
That's kind of your I can't think of the word, but they can nurture themselves there, and should
Yes.
then they come out the other end with then a large enough pot that means they're capable of being taken on as a client, or something
Sure.
happens.
Yeah.
That's really good, because I think that's the issue a lot of the industry is having to do now is say sorry, not enough, which is a
Yeah.
brutal place to be as an industry.
It is. That won't sit well with a lot of peers up and down the country. It doesn't sit well with me, but it's business, right? I can't help you profitably. I can't add sufficient value to you that means I can charge you enough fees for me to make any profit with this. And I'm not a charity. So, we are in a position at Jackson's. I give the advisors, scope if they want to do some pro bono work. They can do that. They can do sort of 2 or 3 cases a year if they want, and they run it past me first. But sometimes we get somebody local to us in Penzance who just needs a bit of help, and we're just like, we'll just do it. We had a guy, paragon of the community, who was a Methodist minister, looked after the sort of village hall for absolutely years, realized he had a pension that he'd forgotten about. He's quite disabled. It was big enough, but not massive. And we just said, look, we'll do it for you, and we'll do it for free because, you've done a lot for the community, so let us do it back. He just broke down in the office. But it's a nice position to be in, right? I'm aware that not everybody can do that. But the academy is, the reason it came about is because it kind of fills that gap. If you believe, as I do, that anybody can do this themselves, and that for most people, 95% of the population is pension and an ISA, invested well, and intelligent drawdown. So if you're spending, it's doing that in a way that is sustainable. If you're building wealth, it's easy, right? Stick as much as you can in, keep your costs as low as possible, and think about it within 5 years of retirement, right? That's basically it. And make sure you've got some insurance in case the world comes sort of crashing down around you. But people can learn to do that stuff themselves. So I teach them in the academy, even those who are at retirement and thinking about drawdown strategy. I teach them all that and help them set it up so that it takes them 2 hours a year to maintain, or half a day at most. Because we're big believers in simplicity. Complexity is not a badge of honor, particularly when it comes to finance. And so if you can simplify things as much as you can, it's easy to engage with it and it's easy to stay on top of, and it frees people up to do the really cool things like going on holiday and helping out their kids and looking after the grandchildren. And, money's only a tool for those things ultimately. So the academy is my attempt to bridge the advice gap, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Loads of free stuff for the masses. If you really want to go detailed and teach yourself properly, then the academy is how to do that. And it's working. We're busy.
Fantastic. So there's the other upside to then the content as well. Then obviously it's not going to be on the level you've got with the academy, because that must have taken countless hours to build. But if you are just doing some level of content, at least it's a place where you can say, hey, keep watching me, and
yes,
here's some objectives to go away. Here's your homework to go work on, and give me an update in 12 months. Give me an update in 24 months.
Yeah. Keep in touch, right? Yeah, keep in touch and love to help you down the line if we can. But here's some stuff you need to think about. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. You can do it to a greater or lesser extent. But even if your sort of vehicle for delivering content is your own company website, right? That's properly useful, because people who never become clients might end up sort of bookmarking your site and saying, actually, some really helpful stuff here. It's really helped me think about what I'm going to do around retirement. I couldn't really get my head around the NHS pension scheme from when I used to be a nursing auxiliary 20 years ago. But now I get the statement. It kind of makes sense because of some videos that I watched. When they come to seek advice, they're not going anywhere else because you've built the trust. Nobody ever says no when they get in touch with us, which I smile at it, really. There is no winning business at Jackson's because it's already won because of all the hours of content that we've put in. So we don't pay our advisors based on production because they're not producing anything. Meaningful Money produces it, which is, unusual. I get it, but we pay them really well, and it's a nice place to work, and there's no pressure. So, it's a slightly weird, different way of doing things, but it's working for me. And I just think you can replicate bits of it or all of it or whatever, and the internet is big enough for 1,000 meaningful monies, because every one will reach a different cohort of people, which is awesome.
Well, I think that's reassuring to those listening that actually there's still space for you to join in your own right then. And
yeah, absolutely.
What a fantastic, journey you've been on. And from talking to you, this isn't the end, is it? You've still got so much more to do.
I turned 50 this year, man. So, but now actually my focus now has turned to handing it over. I don't ever want to sell Jackson's, right? Except to my team. So the goal, assuming it still exists in 5 or 10 years' time, I don't want to do it. My goal would be employee ownership. But I mean, we'll sort of cross that bridge when we come to it. But my job now is to get the company ready for that, so that I can basically remove myself. And that goes for Meaningful Money as well, which is, if anything, a bigger challenge because of the face and the voice. But the media sort of element, I want to sort of expand wider than just me, so that I can remove myself from both, and it will largely continue. So it's like the next challenge for me. Lots of fun though.
Fantastic. Well, I think that's a really nice place for us to end. It's certainly been inspiring for myself. Obviously, we're listening to today's podcast episode, so I'm on a journey myself with content and hoping to help those within the financial services profession, but from a different angle, from its careers element. And so it's been inspiring for me to have a very long-term view for this and just let whatever happens.
Yeah.
Because I certainly don't think you would have predicted the level of success you've had off the back of it 15 years ago. So
Absolutely not.
Really appreciate your time today. And for those listening, I hope you've enjoyed this episode as much as I have. Please do subscribe, because we're looking to continue to deliver fantastic guests such as Pete. So yeah, stay tuned for the next one.